Greetings to you. This is Mr. Shatepa Emmanuel, and presenting here is Module 2, English. I'm sure most of you are familiar with what to expect in here. And as English teachers, it's very important that we understand just the basics of English, because in the classroom, you can expect anything from students. Here are my details. You can contact me on that cell phone number. Email is there. Between 8 o'clock and 4 o'clock, Monday through Fridays. So, like I said, this is English 2, or rather Module 2. And we need to understand that using English outside the classroom is not the same as within the classroom. So this is where we equip each other in this module to use English within the classroom in a professional manner, because you're teaching somebody who will teach somebody else the next day. So it's very important that you yourself understand and have a good knowledge of what you're delivering to the next person. You will learn a few things in this particular module subject, and all the components of English language, whether it's speaking or writing and listening. And by the end of this subject, or by the end of this module per se, you should be able to at least explain some of the ways, successful ones, on how to teach English speaking activities. Also have a detailed and a well-organized lesson plan as an English teacher. Also develop your further speaking skills, not only your skills, but learners' skills too. Because like I said earlier, your skills, your level of your skills, have a very much big impact on the level of those that you're teaching. If your skill level is not that good, it will of course impact the others. So it is very important that we take this module seriously, because we will impact those that we will work with. We'll also explore many different ways to teach reading and writing, because there is no one size fits all when it comes to teaching and reading. So it's very important that you have 2 or 3 ways, or more than just that. Be inclusive enough to make sure that if one way of teaching does not work, you can apply the next one. And that is what we expect you to have, at least by the end of this module. With the assessment, you'll be assessed twice in this module. Of course, one assignment, and then the obvious one, the examination. Now, the assignment is a prerequisite to an examination, like everywhere else you find. You need a certain grade, you need a certain percentage in order to get to the next assessment. That's of course 50% in your assignment, and that means you can qualify for the exam only if you have 50% and above. I think this is self-explanatory, should be clear enough. And then within the examination, you will also have an opportunity to, you will need to score you will need to score 50% at the end of the exam, and it's 130 out of 130 total. So 60% of the written examination plus 40% of the assessment semester mark should be your minimum pass. With your exam, you need 60%. And then from your assessment, you need more than 50%. Once you have that, they count towards the final marks of your of the overall performance. That's on assessment. So this is what is to be covered in this presentation. Development of skills, development of speaking skills, and issues with public speaking. The reason why there is the need to develop our skills in public speaking, and not only in classroom, is that speaking does not only end in the class. You go beyond the classroom. The people you teach also go beyond the classroom. So if we do not develop their skills of speaking, excuse me, we derive them a chance to be good public speakers. So we need to cover this and understand that the idea behind this unit is to make sure that the shyness that finds people in public speaking, uncomfortability to just speak because of because they feel that they don't have adequate vocab to use in public, is what is covered in this unit. So it has to help people get out of their cocoons and be comfortable speaking in people, but it should start when they are well equipped, and that's you to do it. And then you will use teaching methods of activities to improve learners' reading. So you, like I said earlier, no one size fits all. One comp cannot comp all the learners. So here, in this unit, we uncover all or several types of teaching methods and activities that we think will work for your learners, for yourself, and other people also. And then you have some reading development issues, which are quite obvious. We have issues when it comes to reading. Different learners, different students have different needs. Therefore, their needs can be different here. And this is a unit that addresses those issues, addressing them and being inclusive enough, acknowledging their differences, and teaching them the approaches that work for most of them, if not all of them. And then the last unit here will be assessing the areas of language development. Now that you have taught them all these things, we now have to assess all these areas of language development. How does the language develop in these processes? How does one handle each stage until they get to the main point? To start off, we have intonation and pronunciation. We said this unit is more on speaking, so intonation and pronunciation. Intonation has to do with the change in your tone, the change in the pitch and the level of your speaking. This is why written language is different from, obviously, is different from spoken language. And sometimes when you may have noticed that when you write something to someone, and you intend to mean something, it may sound either odd, off, rude, or somehow because it's just written. But once you said it, it will sound exactly how you want it. And also on top of that, your tone sometimes will come off so wrong, and the other person will think you either angry or you mean something else different. It's all about the intonation, the tone, the level of the pitch. So that is all what makes up the component of intonation. It's in the tone, it's in that voice that comes out of you, either that stresses, that cuts something. That tone is very important to consider when speaking. And pronunciation, on the other hand, is just how you make a sound to make sure that the word sounds right. This is very common in us, mispronunciation. If a word is new to us, especially words that we don't use most of the time, we may mispronounce them. And this is where we look at them and do some bit of rehearsal in a module, per se, and say, how do I pronounce this word? How do I best pronounce this word and avoid this word, per se? So it's very important that we learn and teach the learners how to pronounce the word. This is where you do pronunciation games. This is where you do anything that helps students to pronounce. And when it comes to pronunciation, the reason why they are going hand in hand with intonation is that pronunciation, when you're pronouncing words, there are some words that at some point you have to raise your pitch. You have to raise your voice. You have to start with a high pitch. You have to end with a low pitch. So the two somehow are intertwined, because you need one to use the other. So you know your intonation, and you know you will have a good pronunciation in words once you understand how the words are pronounced. And then we have a syllabus. A syllabus, to define it, that is the guideline that you use. Of course you know it, of course you've seen it, of course I believe you have one. So these guidelines, this document helps us navigate through our lessons. Where do we go? It's like you are on a boat and you're sailing somewhere and you need a map. Because if you don't have a map, you can just sail anywhere off course. And to stay on course, you need a navigating map. And it's the same as a syllabus. It has certain aims that the education ministry has put in place, so that all the teachers move towards one destination, the same destination, without going astray and going off course. To stay on course, then we need a syllabus, because even with reading, writing, speaking, listening, we need to have aims of why we have what we have. Okay, so in this case, some of the aims include communicating skill, the meaning of interaction, because we want to achieve a multilingual and multicultural society. So it's one of those aims that when you look at reading, we want to achieve a culture of reading. We want to achieve a platform where students or learners can access information to read different languages. They should be able to study anyhow. They should not be limited by anything when it comes to reading. A multicultural society, of course, we are different people from different cultures. We have different languages, and therefore the reading will be different. So we want to make sure that the culture of reading is in place. And there's one say that says, if you want to hide something from a black man, put it in writing. Funny enough, it's true. We just hate reading. It's just that. Now, one of the aim of the syllabus is that it is challenging us to be people who love reading. Because when we read, we get somewhere. There are so many reasons why it's important to read. We're going to come to that just now. But there are few reasons per individual why they hate reading, why they do reading, and why they don't do reading. Okay? So, the general aims that are promoted by the syllabus now here, the syllabus are including intellectual development. When you read, you become intellectually okay, because when you read, you get new vocabs, you understand words, your pronunciation, like we said at the top there, you will get better. Your intonation, you may also read about that. You also get to develop your self-confidence and better understand world which you live as an individual. This is because when you read, you are uncovering things from all aspects of the world. How will you know about America if you don't read? How will you know about Caprivi when you live in Windhoek when you don't read? How will you know about outside world if you don't read? So reading can enrich your knowledge in basic terms. Also, get a positive attitude, understand your local social culture issues. These are things now you find in the reading. Be aware in health, population issues, all these things, like I said earlier, you will understand them. You will be aware just through reading. If there is any other way that individuals or you teachers can pass on to your learners the attitude of reading, you will be doing this country a favor. And you also do your future children a favor, because when you teach students in the class and they pick up something that you teach them, you are touching lives and you are teaching people in the next generation and the next generation and the next generation. So if there's one way you can promote reading, the culture of reading in the classroom, you do that and you see the wonders that you're going to make. So now there are ways of teaching, of course, in the classroom, and every teacher chooses whichever is comfortable for them. what you choose may not be the same as the next person, because you're dealing with different students, and the next person is dealing with a different student. So one way to teach vocabulary is the use of games. So sometimes you may think, is it really worth using games with children? Will they really learn anything? Well, the truth is that when teaching is made fun, I tell you, when teaching is made fun, psychology-wise, it catches the interest of those that you're teaching. And when you catch their interest, you are guaranteed to have them learn a thing or two. As opposed to just reading, or as opposed to just teaching anyhow, when students can be distracted or learners can be distracted. So you need to use ways that you know can catch learners' attention. One of them being games in the classroom. How do I make my games be so educational? How do I make my game so interesting that the learners would want to learn more around what I'm teaching? So you use games in the classroom to teach vocabs. And then when we put these words into place, we try to use new words that are not so hard, far from the learner's understanding that we will lose them. We use words depending on their level of learning, because as a teacher you will understand and you will know the kind of people you're dealing with. Once you understand them, you'll be able to know the level they are, and then you know the level of words you should use. If your learner's level is just intermediate, don't use expert words to play games with them or to put in the games, because you will lose them halfway. They will lose the interest right away. So oral language development, like I said earlier, this has to do with now coming from the bottom up there. It's a process. A young child will learn from the bottom, somewhere there in the middle, somewhere there in the middle, all the way up. So this happens when you take into consideration the fact that a child, as they learn, whether they are learning a language in writing or in speaking or listening, they should go through a development stage, and you should allow them to have that. So, like we say here, all the children learn the rules of their language at early age through use of overtime without formal instruction. That's one source. So what we are trying to say here is that at the beginning, as they learn a language, it's an innate thing, it's an inborn thing for them to just learn few things from home without anybody teaching them. It's in them. The development stage starts from the beginning, but at the beginning, they just learn some things that we don't need to teach them in the class. They observe and they pick up. They imitate and they pick it up. All these things are all now in the process of language development. Like I explained, they have an innate there. They learn specific variety at important people around them speak, and they pick up all these things when people are speaking around them. And one time somebody asked, why is it so easy for kids to learn insulting words compared to the positive words, which was an interesting question. And this is a study that was done. I just did not go much into detail with it, because the researchers wanted to understand, why is the mind so attracted to the negative connotated words with children as opposed to the positive one. When you insult around the child will pick it up, the word, quickly, as opposed to just you using positive words. And the question is, why that? Which is something I want to leave it to you guys. Why do we learn? Why do kids learn fast the negative words as opposed to the positive words? So, and then we have the component. Now we understand that the children or human beings go through stages with the language. Now there are components to oral language, which is now speaking. We have phonological, we have semantic, and syntactic. Okay, so phonological, as the word entails, phonology is phone. So you hear phonology, you see, you could hear something that has to do with the phone there. So it must do with the sound. In case you want to now master these words, phonology, you could hear phone, or this could be sound. So this is just how the word sounds, the study of this combination of letters coming together to form a certain sound, how the word can sound. And there are rules that govern how we should pronounce these words, because phonology, under phonology is where you find pronunciation and intonation, because that's how the words are governed and ruled to be sound. The words should not sound like this until you mean like this. All these rules are under phonology, because when we speak, we need to adhere to rules of that particular language. We don't just say a word anyhow. It should sound that way. It should be pronounced that way. So the study of this sound of words is what we call now, or it's what falls under phonology. Semantic. Semantic has to do with the meaning of words. Now that you can pronounce the word, what is the meaning of that word? What are the meanings of these words? So you will see that words are made up of morphemes. Morphemes, however, are small components, meaningful components of a language, that each one that can stand on their own and still have meaning. So morphemes are small chunks and components that if you add it to the other word, they either mean something different, but they all perform equally, or they perform important tasks in the language. And that's semantic. They change the meaning of the word, they change the meaning of something just by adding them to that. So now you have an example here. Paper plus S are the two morphemes that make up papers. So you can see paper is a word. That's one, singular, it's just one. To make that plural, you just add S. S is also a morpheme. You can see that it's just an S, but it has a meaning. It serves its purpose. You add them together, you have a plural word of the previous word, which is papers. We can go all the way and we can say speak, walk, walked. You have walk, and ed that is added, and the ed is there to show past tense. And then walk is just a present, and then that's a morpheme, another morpheme added. You combine them together, and then you see that the meaning has changed. It's still walk, yes, it's still moving your limbs one ahead of the other. But then when you add another morpheme, which is ed, you realize that semantically you have changed the meaning, because one was a present and the other one become a past tense. Syntactic. So now we have syntactic, we have morphology, which is now the sound, and we have some semantic, which is the meaning, and now syntactic. That is just the ability to combine these morphemes into sentences. Now you have the words, you have this word walk, and you have this word Maria. So now the ability to add Maria together with walk and come up with a sentence is what we call syntax, or syntactic per se, the syntactic component. Maria walked, Maria lives somewhere, the teacher is teaching, learners are listening. All these are words put together, of course, in a grammatical manner, and of course, according to that particular language. Every language has its own rule when it comes to syntax. Maybe the verb SVU, for example, English, subject, verb, or object. Other subject will say SOV, subject, object, verb. All these are all under syntactic, because every language has rules. And these rules are to be followed when you are bringing up sentences. Very interesting. So you have an example here. As soon as a child uses two morphemes together, as in more cracker, she is using syntactic rules about how morphemes are combined to convey meaning. So there is cracker and there is more. So the child adds these together, and it makes more than just one meaning. Cracker means one. More, now you were given a modifier there, which is more, and now you understand that it's not just one cracker, they became more. And it's not because the child added S on there, is because the child added another whole word before that, which is then modifying the kind of cracker, which they, in this case, being many more, and that is now the syntactic component of the oral language. Okay? So why reading is important? We spoke about this earlier, and it's said that we don't like reading. I'm not a fan of reading myself, but I try. Something should really catch my attention to love and to want reading. But the reading here that we're talking about is not the reading just of a newspaper per se, but it's a reading that has to enrich you in the classroom, the reading that can take you somewhere. There is reading for pleasure, there is reading for professional-wise, for other reasons, preparing for the exam, intensive reading, pleasure reading. But in a nutshell, reading should be something that we incorporate in our cultures and just love to do it because we can do it, not because we expected to study, not because we expected to write an exam, not because we're going to do something, but to enrich our society. Like reading is vital to finding a good job. That's an example. Some job will require you to know about the business, about the company, so you will require to read before you get there, because it develops the mind. Your mind will develop because then you have new vocabs, you have all these new ways of speaking. You will discover new things, of course, like I said, about other countries. Your imagination can be developed. You become creative side. You become creative, and this means when you read from here and there, when you put them together, the mind is so powerful, and it has a way of developing knowledge from different places into one something. The only reason you can, one of the many reasons why a human being can come up with something when they read is that the mind has the ability to combine knowledge and form one holistic thing, and that comes only through reading. Self-image, you can develop that. You can also have phonic readings program, improve spelling. Of course, your spelling will be good. Spoken and written are building blocks of life. In other words, we live around reading. We live around speaking people. We live around written. So spoken written forms of communication are every day-to-day life. So the better way to be part of a society that uses oral and written form of language is to also be informed and read here and there. So post-reading, this is just after activities. Post means after activities. And they come in handy. You may find many of them, but you choose what fits your students. Like I said earlier, you know and you understand your students better than anybody else. So you choose your own reading activities, okay? So you just use this to revisit, to respond to the content. What did you teach? If you taught about, for example, you taught that day, you taught about finding a job, okay? You taught them about finding a job, you gave them something to read, they read an interview, and then you realized that they were engaging enough. And after that, you want to assess whether what you have taught was really a success. Now, when you use post-reading activities, you give them something to read, and you say, let them do a role play, but they are reading. So it's an activity that is after the main activity, post-reading activity. That's why it's called post-reading activity. So you are revisiting what you have taught them in a different way that will help them remember what you taught them. That's very important. So post-reading activities should also be valued many times because they help us assess what we taught. Did we really reach the objectives that we set before the class? Did we really do great? So the only way to check that is have activities that will assess that. And those are called post-reading activities if you're teaching a reading activity that day. Okay? You will help them read, develop their reading strategies. there's another example here, discussing words and concepts with other students using graphic organizers. And then when you use graphic organizers, they are reading with the others in a group. And when they do that, their skills will relate to what you taught them. And then that's how you get them to, you get yourself to understand what level did they get to, what did they learn in that class by doing just that. And then we have the types of writing. This is usually found in long writing like essays. You have types of writings in essays because the writings differ: expository, descriptive, narrative, persuasive, and creative. Some of them are self-explanatory, expository. This is just somebody explaining, of course. Descriptive, you can see somebody describing. Narrating is narrating a story, telling a story from the beginning. Persuasive, and you're convincing. And creative, and being creative. So in details, you will assess your learners, or you will teach your learners how to write each of these. And it's up to you to choose which way works for you and which way would work for them. When they are writing an expository writing, for example in essays, mostly we find this in essay writing because they need to write longer. The only way they can inform and explain something is either in a paragraph or in essay format. So in here, they are explaining something. They are explaining and describing something to you. Maybe their holiday, tell us about your holiday, tell us about your family, tell us about your parents, tell us about something. So they use adjectives more in this particular writing because they want to create a picture in the reader's mind. Because the only way you can inform and explain and describe something to somebody is by bringing their imagination to life. And you can only do that by using the right words in your writing. So you bring every modifier, every adjective to make sure that the reader is really living my experience. And that is an expository writing. And for learners to become this good and be imaginative and be creative is when they read a lot. So all these things are linking together. If they read a lot, they will know a lot. If they read about other things, they will know about other things. But learners who don't will have a limited vocab, will have a limited knowledge, and so therefore their expository writing won't be as live as the other person that reads. So the culture of reading goes all the way to all these things. One component needs the next component. So when they write this, you will know that this person understands the task. They understand what they're talking about. Okay? Their opinions are left out, leaving you with facts and figures instead of trying to defend or support opinion. So here, this is the most common type of writing you'll find in a textbook and online, which is true. As the author is mostly trying to tell you about the subject, their opinions, and are left out, leaving you facts and figures. Like I said, this can be done by somebody else. In this context, that paragraph says somebody else out there online or in the textbook. But you are going to teach the learners about how they should do it. So you teaching them how to write this will help them become better authors next time. Descriptive, that is definitely self-explanatory. They just describe something and it's the same as it's not far from the first one. They describe something. They take a pen, a paper, they take a bus, and if they are talking about a bus, they talk about the color of the bus, they talk about the seats on the bus, they talk about the driver of the bus, they talk about the picking up of the bus, they talk about the kind of driving of the bus, they talk about the speed of a bus, and all these things are describing that particular thing. They can be describing a thing, can be describing an event, they can be describing a person, they can be describing a certain thing. So this is just descriptive writing in itself, and it can be poetic at times, because when people become poetic about this, it's because they want to catch the reader's attention, nothing more. we spoke about how people, many people, if not all of them, many people hate reading. To catch the reader's attention, you must be very creative. First paragraph or first few paragraphs, give me a reason why I should read further. Once you give me that, I'm hooked. I want to know more. What is next? What's coming? So you need to be creative. If you have to use poetic, it's just to create that interest in the reader. Okay? So this is a descriptive part where when you read something, you can really tell that the person is bringing out the description and the features of that thing to life. Okay? Sometimes when you're reading this, you feel like you are there. You're presently there. You sometimes feel like I'm also there with the person that is there. Sometimes we use figure of speech such as metaphors, similes to just create the image and make it more clear. Narrative, this is you telling a story. When I grew up, I was this, I was that, or when we went to the coast, we did that, we did. This is something that we do almost in our everyday lives. And students do, or learners also do, when they are at break, or when they are having their free time. They find themselves telling each other how or what they did the previous day or the other day. They are narrating their experiences. And it's just the very same thing that we take and we put it in writing. No rocket science. You teach the children how to narrate and how to put their experiences in writing. They already know the experience. You are just there to help them to put the experiences in writing. Okay? So they put themselves in somebody else's shoes sometimes. You can challenge them to do that. They tell real life stories. And sometimes you need to teach them that a story shouldn't just start from there and then end abruptly without a sequence that is followable. Somebody must be able to follow that. We start from 1 to 10 and not 1, 7, and 10. We want to make sure that we understand everything. It must be cohesive. It must be coherent. Fill us in. Help us understand how you went from 1 to 10 and then have a good storyline. Okay? And then we have persuasive writing. This is you convincing someone to either do something or to not do something or to believe something. Okay? You give your opinion of why you believe that should be how it should be. And this is not for learners now. You as students usually do this when you are in an interview. You are trying to persuade the employer. You're telling them why they should take you. I know that is in writing. I know now that is in speaking, but it's the very same thing that happens when you are writing. We take what you have and tell the reader why this is this important or why this and not that. Okay? This is considered biased material and most of it found in advertising. So now you are out there trying to make sure that everything is intact, everything is written from your perspective because it's biased. I want to tell people they should buy my product in advertisement. Why should they buy my product? Because of ABC. I need to know, I need to understand why they need, I need to make them believe that my product is better than everybody else's product. Okay? And then, this is a third last PowerPoint slide here. Now, with the feedback, this is just what you give to the learners after they did something. We all want to know what or how we did in what you ask us to do. The feedback is to give the chance to the learners to assess what they did and tell them whether they really did great. Very, very important. It affects how we feel about our work and inevitably also about ourselves. Feedback affects the student motivation. So we need to be motivated. We need to understand why are we doing what we're doing. Why should we continue? So we need to be motivated. And the only way we can do that with learners in our classes, we need to give them feedback, whether it's written or oral. praise them. When it's negative one, make sure that it's not is discouraging. So when we talk about the usefulness one, is because we're talking about sometimes the negative comments can help them, sometimes they can discourage them. So you have to watch carefully the feedback and the kind of feedback and how you do it, importantly, to the students, because you either uplift them or discourage them. Okay? You have to set time. You don't just do feedback all the time. You have to ask your students, also engage them. Ask them what works for them when it comes to feedback. Do they need it written? Do they need it spoken? Do they need it short? Do they need it long? Are they comfortable with negative comments or not? All these things should be included in how you make your feedback. Okay? So, that is that. Good luck. I hope you all understood.